I grew up in Australia, in Melbourne, and then my family moved to Adelaide. My father suddenly decided that he wanted to become a minister of religion. It meant becoming a student again, and it meant that we went from being quite well off to being really not very well off at all, but also being much, much happier. I think that as a child, fantasy was really important to me, and that was a lot of my childhood, playing these games of the imagination with little perfume bottles and odds and ends that I imagined as people. Maybe that has something to do with what it is that you do as a historian, because I think what fascinated me was people. People as individuals, people's biographies, the fact that each one had a narrative and a character, how they interact with one another, and what it would be like to be someone else. I do remember a point probably where I realised that I loved history, and I was talking to my parents and they were asking me what I was doing in school. And I remember describing a historical event that we'd been learning about, and just the pleasure of putting together all the facts and information that I had and making a pattern out of it. And then the moment that I realised that they were listening to me and that I had interested them, which as a child is always something that is very special. I think the thing that really made me think about history and how it could be done differently was when I got to London and encountered the feminist movement in a big way. I think I'd always been interested in women, and I'd always been annoyed that women hardly ever appeared in the books that I read. I was clear that what I wanted to do was to work on women and the German Reformation. I was interested in finding out what was the Reformation like for them. Women's history had got pushed into a corner where it had all become about witchcraft, and that actually we didn't know anything about the lives of ordinary women. I remember when I was working in Augsburg in the archives, and I remember the moment when I finally came across some criminal records, and they were in a blue folder and they had these beautiful archival knots, and I pulled the string, opened it up, and sand fell out. And if sand falls out of what you're reading, you know no one has read it before. And for the first time I had the voices of real women, and for the first time I felt, now I found these people, and that was just a total transformation. But it's the only woman in the scene, and it seems pretty clear that it is a woman. Have a look.
Yeah, that's extraordinary.
Seeing things is really important to me, so I've always gone with my students to museums and galleries. I've worked closely with people in the Ashmolean here. I've worked with artists. I've been fascinated by what they've been doing around the German Peasants War.
Hey, come and have a look.
What interested me was what happened when large groups of men got together in the Peasants' War.
Yeah.
Walked and marched together, sang together, camped outdoors. They must have known they were going to lose. 6,000 of them were slaughtered on that battlefield. So why did they think that they were going to win? It's what you're interested in. It's what happens when large groups of people get together and engage in something that's a joint enterprise.
Yeah, it's a kind of weird gentleness with a not touching the shoulder, but being very close to someone.
Yes.
And
yes.
And kind of moving in sync. You know?
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. You can't explain a movement like the Peasants' War by talking about ideology. It's about emotions, and it's about religious conviction that's so powerful that you're willing to act in a way you would not otherwise do. You're convinced that God is on your side. I was certainly not the first person you would think of to write a biography of Martin Luther, but I was driven to write about Luther because of the same thing that made me interested in witches. We have more information about Luther, and we can get into him as a person more than just about anyone in 16th century Germany because the sources are so fantastic. I know what he looks like. I know what his body was like. I know what illnesses he had. I have his letters.
I think the single best thing about Lyndal, in my experience, is how inspiring she is. She's a person that really makes you fall in love with history. She's inspired a whole generations of historians after her at Oxford, at Royal Holloway, at various other institutions around Europe. She really is a creative historian. She has a new way of looking at things that is so inspiring for us.
Oh, some beautiful Scots there. Receiving the Holberg Prize has been absolutely overwhelming and very hard to take in. I'm delighted that the Holberg Prize exists because of its recognition of the importance of the work that people in the humanities do and what it means for the body of work that a whole generation of people, of women, have done in the field of women's and feminist history. And that it honours the humanities in this way. It's wonderful. So, thank you.